time for another episode of Off the Record, On the Rocks. Join Michael Toner and Ankarina Lara and break down the latest news on all things Web3, AI, Metaverse, and crypto, filtering out noise and connecting dots as we pour ourselves into the future.
It is tax day. We are done. It's over. Feeling good. Rolling into a new week. Yeah, man, it's things are weird. Hong Kong decided to approve Bitcoin and Ether spot ETFs on U.S. tax day. Super strange.
That's weird. Donald Trump is in court pretending that he didn't pay a bunch of hush money to an adult film star on tax day. Well, that's strange.
Yeah. Doing that jury selection in Manhattan. I'm headed to New York tomorrow. I was at this Axios event in Alexandria, Virginia yesterday with Nick Johnston, the publisher. We got a lot to get to. A lot happening in the news. A lot happening in the markets. I don't know about you, but it did seem like there was blood in the streets the past, 4 or 5 days headed into that tax weekend. People feeling a little nervous about getting those filings in by Monday, not quite ready. And I think the next couple of days here, this week will be very interesting in markets. You've got what I think is being called the third sort of trend line from the Fed data showing that inflation continuing to rise. The Fed doesn't have it under control. So we're going to hear from Jay Powell. Markets are going to react tomorrow, and we are headed into the Bitcoin halvening. I haven't checked the countdown recently.
Countdown today, which, I mean, are countdowns accurate? I don't know. The countdown I saw that seems to be the most accurate is Friday, the 19th, the day before 420, which is another sort of weird coincidence. I haven't checked, actually. I probably should check right now. We're probably coming into either a full moon or a new moon sometime soon, and that should be something we should pay attention to. Full moon is Tuesday the 23rd. Yeah. Next Tuesday, tomorrow. We're recording on Monday, tax day, like you said. You know, the blood in the streets is something that, and this sounds weird, but I really look forward to seeing it. You know, it's not every day these days that you open up your stocks app and you just see red, just like a waterfall of red. It's rare, right? Usually you got a couple green highlights. Usually it's like your Disneys and your Teslas and your things are kind of peeking out. Who knows? Maybe in some weird altcoins. But no, just red, just blood in the street, which gives me the indicator to go buy as a buy indicator. Because of all the things we've been saying over all this time, this is the week we've been waiting for. We're recording today on tax day. We're hoping to do a sneaky recording on the halvening. If it's going to be Friday, we're going to have to do it. Because it would stand to reason that if you're an American and you're heading into last week, to the end of last week, and you've already gone through was it 2 or 3 years of PPP loans, tax deferrals, extensions because of weather emergencies, all that stuff is in the past. We all got a little soft. I mean, I personally got soft. I was expecting not to have to pay again or have to be delayed. And sure enough, all the envelopes start coming, all the messages, no, there's no more GLP cards. You got to pay. So it seems to stand to reason that, maybe myself included, no financial advice, but I know some people who, sold a little cryptocurrency, got a little cash, paid a little tax. And if the United States is in the business of taking PPP checks and buying crypto with it and not buying, diapers and peanut butter like the government wanted us to, well, sooner or later, the piper must be paid. And when tax season comes, I'm sorry, you can't hodl your way to the future if you can't pay your tax bills. So I think a little of that kind of seeped out to cash, pay off Uncle Sam. So look, Uncle Sam's getting his money either way. He doesn't even have to tax your crypto. You're selling it to pay him anyway. But now as we roll into the halvening or the halving later this week, I think things are starting to go up. We're going to start to see things go up again. So I'm very bullish about the blood in the streets. And I don't know about you, but kind of excited to see really this week of all weeks as being one of the more consequential ones, almost like that, the tipping point of the year, if you will, as we fall from April 15th forward downhill towards the election cycle.
I think you're right. I mean, literally the marking of this election cycle with the start of the Trump trial in Manhattan, on tax day, which is kind of everybody getting whole, right? I mean, we're paying last year's bills and everybody's bill is due on April 15th. Even if you file for an extension, The money is due one way or another today. And I think so that means that the U.S. gets to balance those books effectively. You haven't heard too much out of Capitol Hill about budgets, but I know that this is going to be coming into the headline cycle soon. So maybe it has trickled out already because I haven't seen it, but I have no doubt you'll get the government shutdown news coming. And you're right. It's the tipping point. It's the now whatever liquidity, whatever cash is sitting on the sidelines, now markets have decisions to make in 2024. How do we grow our businesses? What do we invest in? Where do we park this cash in the meantime while we start hiring? Or what we've seen in reality is a lot of people getting laid off. More layoffs today. I think our boy Elon laying off people at Tesla. So those are the business decisions that are getting made. We got cash on the sidelines. We don't really need to go hire a bunch of people because we're pretty sure the AI is going to be able to do their job for them.
Oh, see that? There you go. See now you're bringing in the specter, which is what they're going to float around, right? That's going to be the number one reason cited for why layoffs are happening.
Yeah,
and that's not going to be good for AI generally. But then, like talking about defaulting and like balancing the budget. I mean, if all of America has to send in money today, how in the world does the United States government default on anything? Like what would you guess the tax take is from the United States? Like, are there 200 million Americans who pay taxes? What percentage of 330 million pay?
It's a great question, but shouldn't it effectively be whatever the budget dollar is at? Isn't that how much is owed? Can I tell you exactly what it should be? Because that would stand to reason, wouldn't it? If this is what's in the budget, that's what the take is on that day for how much we owe.
Yeah, it shouldn't be some surprise, right? It should be a number that's expected. And so how can the budget be so out of whack with that number that we are headed towards another default? Or is that just a way that the government runs now? Is that like for every 3 months or whatever the cycles are, it's just nice political coverage to talk about a deficit and a budget misalignment just so we can cover up other things happening? I don't know.
It gives
they can't be that hard
power on a quarterly basis. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they're kicking the can and then they're negotiating, and you think about or hear about pork being put into bills and how that works and how money for special interests gets allocated. And that's really where I think that budget cycle in DC is obnoxious, to be honest. But yeah, I'm excited about this week. And this is a random one, and I literally don't know what made me even think of this. But let's not forget old Taylor Swift dropping a new album this week. So, I think I just try to look at that zeitgeist of like you had Beyonce with her in a music sense. Now you've got this apex happening. We talked about the Great American Eclipse. We've got this kind of cultural icon with Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, which we did spend an inordinate amount of time talking about at the end of the NFL season and talking about like what that meant in terms of just, I don't know, this zeitgeist of the moment. And here she is with another album. Make of it what you will. Maybe it coincides with that new moon. That would make sense to me.
In terms of you want to get real like celestial conspiracy. I mean, you want to look at the whole picture. Let's pan back too, because this is also the week between Coachella, events, and Coachella had been, previously the Taylor Swift story, then the Beyonce story, then just these different major headliners coming out to the desert in California and putting on, one of the largest festivals that exists in the country, which is Coachella. I'll just put my name up there. I attended the first Coachella.
OG.
I'm an OG way back. I remember when people talked about the first Burning Man. You can't even contemplate what that was like on Ocean Beach in San Francisco. It wasn't even in Nevada. The first Coachella was, in fact, in India at the Polo Fields, but it was nothing like the machine, the factory of innovation that it is today. But this year's Coachella kind of came and went without the surprises that some people were talking about. Like, Taylor didn't come to drop her album and do a surprise, duet. Beyonce didn't arrive in a private plane with a 320 marching band, students from some local high school. Like there were these spectacles that were happening. And part of it too was, right, it was the Zoom culture of pandemic that created, like, we need to have these cultural festival moments. But like you said, the zeitgeist of the moment today is it's really a collision of so many factors. There's so much noise. It's hard to actually know, like, where are the sensitivity levers here? Like, what if Donald Trump wasn't in court today and you pull that lever off? Like, how does that change how this week or this month goes? Put that lever back. What if Taylor Swift doesn't drop the album today and we put that lever back? You know, how do we see where if you were to remove or add more to this 1 week, like why? I mean, spring break's over, like all that's done. Everyone's back. No one has an excuse to not be in a chair doing something, right? Everyone's back in school. Everyone's healthy, supposedly. Everyone's fine. And it's tax day. And now there's just so much other stuff. And like, just to bring it back to the top of what we were saying, Hong Kong just decides to, so the spot Bitcoin ETF is something that they had approved even before the United States did. Let's not forget that. They were on that real cutting edge there. But the news today to say that the ETF for Ethereum is allowed, and that's on the heels of, I want to say, Gensler and these guys all saying, well, you know, the entire sort of consensus protocol of Ethereum is such that there's a disproportionate number of validators on nodes based on their ETH stores, which sort of roughly translates to our listeners that unlike Bitcoin, a blockchain, which is technology and an algorithm that's just running, and there are validators and nodes, but it's set up so that everyone has a sort of, there's an equity in terms of how blocks are processed and put on the chain. Ethereum doesn't work that way. Ethereum actually works that if you have more ETH, then you are a better node. So the more, ipso facto, the more money you have, the more influence you have over the Ethereum network. So just by virtue of that one detail, I think you and I would agree that it sounds like it's sort of ripe for corruption and manipulation. But it turns out the Hong Kong government thinks it's great.
All good. Clear it, list it,
Clear it, move it through,
send it, full send.
I don't know what tax day is in Hong Kong, but somebody tells me it's not today because this is about to get wild overseas.
I think that's super interesting. I've been following some of the stuff coming from Eleanor Terrett. I know we talk about Eleanor covering a lot of the crypto news. She posted something on Friday talking about the Coinbase motion to dismiss the SEC's case against it. We talked a little bit about this, and it looks like Coinbase is retaliating, seeking an interlocutory appeal on that recent order involving the how Coinbase is handling investment contracts and essentially who has custody of these assets and who has to file them. And I say all that because we know Coinbase is really pushing right now their layer 2 build on Base. And it's an Ethereum layer 2 protocol to build decentralized applications. And they're calling it the tool to onboard 1 billion people. And if anybody is going to do it, it's going to be Coinbase. And if you're going to need a provable layer 2, you know, that's sort of been anointed and blessed ipso facto by the SEC for having allowed Coinbase to be listed as a publicly traded company, and ipso facto because Coinbase was listed as the surveillance partner for every Bitcoin spot ETF. I would imagine that those ETFs with Ethereum, when they get approved, building on Base, all of a sudden starts to make a lot of sense for businesses who would now have, I think, at least a hint of regulatory clarity around how Ethereum is going to be treated as a security. When it's a security, you could build a security on top of Ethereum. Sometimes it's not a security. Sometimes the things you put on the Ethereum could be concert tickets. You know, could be tickets to that Taylor Swift concert paid for in Ethereum. I've got the validation on my phone. Is that a security? No. But can it use the same protocols and tools and rails? Absolutely. It sure can. And I think that definition is going to come to fruition very soon. And the fact that Coinbase is fighting this in the markets or in the case, in the legal case.
So two questions about that, though. So let's just say that ticket to the Taylor Swift concert is on the Ethereum blockchain, and they don't call it an NFT per se, right? We're not suggesting that. It's just a ticket. But by the nature of it being a digital ticket, most people, I think, would look at it and say, oh, and plus it's exclusive, right? There were only this finite number of tickets sold. If you were one of the 50,000 people to see her at blank arena, then you're one of 50,000 people who owns a unique ticket stub. Remember back in the old days, people would save their ticket stubs. You'd save your concert tee, you'd frame them both, you put them on the wall of your little room, your rock and roll room. So if I have a concert ticket, and she didn't say it was an NFT or a collectible or any of those words that trigger that, but isn't that have some kind of value that increases over time? Isn't that a security? And if that's a thought process we can go down, then what it almost sounds like, why I hear you kind of playing all that back, is Coinbase, as I think they've tried, the feds, the government, the SEC, Coinbase, they've tried to frame them and position them in a specific light to give them a disproportionate amount of influence. I'll sort of go this far to say that it feels like, and it has felt like since we've been covering this over the years, that Brian Armstrong and all the cronies who came over, and remember there was that hiring spree before they IPO'd. They were bringing in like the marketers from Facebook. You had people who were even from government regulatory bodies coming into Coinbase, moving around, a lot of hiring, a lot of moving. So just getting everybody on the same page, right? Getting Coinbase on the same page with the government. Then they try calling them something like a partner. They don't say a partner, they say a surveillance partner. And I don't know if, I mean, you and me, we hear that, we're like, ugh, that's kind of like, I don't want to be surveilled. What does that even mean? It's the wrong word. And they kind of keep changing it. Then there's like a custodial partner. Then there's, oh no, we're just looking now for banking partners. Then Coinbase will be blah, blah, blah. And it goes all these, and then they're advisors or whatever they are. But if you think about it, this isn't sort of dissimilar really as to how something like the IRS or, organizations that manage financial transactions and details of American people, there's a history of creating these. I'm not going to say out of thin air, but opportunistically, and they exist. So now we have the IRS, which exists and manages today tax day, but they're not the government. They're a private company, which is odd. And here's Coinbase, who is kind of sort of being teed up to be an IRS-ish like entity as it pertains to crypto. And are they the government? No, they're a private company that's under the government's thumb, as we know. They keep squeezing Armstrong. And they're in constant lawsuits with each other. I mean, we should go back and look. Maybe the IRS was constantly suing the government before they forced them to do their dirty work. But just all comes around to me to say, as you need someone to be the arbiter, the layer of truth on what is a security and what is a commodity and how these things work, it would be nice and convenient for the government to just have Coinbase kind of be the enforcement arm, if you will, of what the government says these things are. Because we're going to come all the way back around, if you're talking about Taylor Swift tickets, to Pokemon cards that end up being tokenized on Ethereum, meme tokens. So that storyline, I mean, kind of put a bow on this for me, because I'm sort of swirling with it, but it feels like there are multiple sword taps that are going to keep happening on the shoulders of Coinbase by the government that just kind of keeps making them more and more official. I can knight you. I can do all these fancy things with the queen's sword, but guess what? You're still not a royal.
And
I'll call you sir.
We talked about this.
You're not a royal.
A few times, because it can't just be Coinbase. I know there's a case right now of the SEC versus Uniswap, which to SEC and the feds trying to like get in the door at Uniswap and be like, all right, we got to now investigate these guys. Are they on the up and up? What have they? And for all accounts, it seems like they are a trusted exchange, that they have allowed users of decentralized tokens to buy and sell on Uniswap. And now the SEC's got to go look at it, because it can't just be Coinbase. That would be a monopoly. They can't let it play out like that. So it is almost like they're trying to do this market formation. And in the meantime, Coinbase is doing the education. They're doing the lobbying. They're doing the hard work to buy time to build the rest of the market, so that when you do get to the point of every ticket, every transaction, every little thing you do can be on chain, because if it goes viral and I want to list it and I want to create a meme token around it, I should be able to do that. And maybe Coinbase, maybe Uniswap, those rules of how you fractionalize it, how you sell it to the public as a token, who creates the wallet, who KYCs the money going into that wallet. You could go do your own meme token for every little thing. If you can build an audience and raise funding around it, you should be able to do that. And one thing, just to come back, and I'm gonna be like the crazy financial services Taylor Swift crypto conspiracy theorist, but we've talked about Taylor Swift from an ownership perspective. Here's somebody who's never uttered the word crypto, at least to my knowledge, right? I never hear her talk about it, but she's talked about owning her own music. And when she went and just did this tour, she was the sole act at a whole stadium, 3 nights, right? The whole stadium, every night, 3 nights in a row, at the same city, every time. She changed the model. She changed the model completely. She's now going to own her music. She's now going to sell out whole stadiums in each city each time. Why wouldn't she want? And we did hear a little bit about this with the debacles around StubHub and how people had to buy tickets and the price gouging that happens inside of monopolies like Ticketmaster and StubHub, who control, in essence, the velocity with which they can sell these tickets. Wouldn't it make sense for a big star like that to be able to own that too? And anyone should be able to, whether you're Taylor Swift or you and I, and we want to create a token around for our listeners to reward them to go and mint this token. I see no reason why we're not going to get there, because the technology will allow for it. The rules and the regulation should be written in a way that create an environment for that kind of innovation to flourish. Because I can't come up with every idea and riff with you right now on every potential concept. There are unlimited concepts of what you can now build on these new networks getting formed right now, new nodes getting created.
And that just kind of keep that baton and keep running. Part of what I think, and I think what you think, is so interesting and intriguing about all of this is it deals with the nexus of what the internet was supposed to be built for, which is sort of, if we could boil it down to a single word, like let's just say some level of anonymity, so that you can freely transact, consume, experience. That's sort of the idea of what the internet does, right? It breaks down the borders and allows information to flow freely in theory. But that comes into conflict with the governments and nation states wanting to control the flow of information and the access. And so ownership, as the way every one of the new songs in Taylor Swift's catalog has a bracket or parentheses, Taylor's version, to let you know this is not a synthetic version of me, says Taylor, even though her other music wasn't manufactured by AI. It was manufactured and controlled by another person, not her.
So important.
It's important to do. But underlying, and yet you would think that there would be this intense conversation and battle happening around ownership and fractionalized ownership, the way we talk about it, because we know that's where it's headed. But the government and the SEC, who are, have humans in their positions, but who are methodical over a continuum, they're going to fight a war with you 20, 30, 40 years from now. And it's all planned. It's just they don't have time right now, and they don't need to, because they know, well, gosh, if we just get to the underlying core, how do you get one of these NFTs? How do you get a concert ticket? How does someone enjoy this thing called fractionalized ownership in this digital space? Oh, well, you have to find a digital currency, a cryptocurrency that works on these things called blockchains. And ultimately, you go to the very base core, squeeze on-ramps and off-ramps to limit Americans putting money into and out of crypto generally. B, go take down everything that's kind of like a stable coin, from ripples to tethers to whatever. C, then start regulating and calling things securities and bring in all your different acronym government agencies to manage it. And then effectively, you control the source of how any 14-year-old kid is going to ultimately end up getting that concert ticket stub for Taylor Swift. So, and then you don't even have to have the conversation about ownership or fractionalized ownership, because that can still happen at the Taylor level, where you're still inking paper with guys in New York and saying, let's do a record deal. So like I said, we're so far away from you or I influencing ownership. That's to me where you hear me talk, when I hear you saying all these things, I'm realizing Taylor represents the tip of a super long spear Like she's able to because she's Taylor. But you and I, like managing ownership of our own identity online is going to be like the war we fight till we die.
I mean, that's big. That's bold. I think there are mechanisms that we can use to own our own identity. I think, but I guess it does still come like Apple came to mind. I was thinking about Face ID and the secure enclave on the phone, but at the same time, it's still a centralized entity in that it is Apple. And I think that connection between hardware and software, is going to continue to be important. I want to stick on one thing and maybe we'll come back to hardware, software, but just in this idea of custody and ownership, another news coming from my girl Eleanor. This was from on Friday. This was the Federal Reserve has just slapped Custodia Bank, which Custodia Bank is Custodia specializes in digital asset payment and custody solutions for U.S. commercial customers. Deposits are not FDIC insured, is what their Twitter profile says. And the Federal Reserve on Friday slapped them with a bill related to a lawsuit, I guess that Custodia had brought and lost. So here's a bank, Custodia Bank, that's building digital asset payment and custody solutions that is getting put in the crosshairs of the Federal Reserve, and really drawing attention to this company that my guess is probably trying to do something really cool and really innovative. And it's a good example of them getting stifled because the regulation likely doesn't allow them to do that kind of tokenization of assets. But anyway, I don't know how we get back to hardware and software from that, but
so I'll get you back from one thing. So the FDIC is an interesting one because that is, just the FDIC is something that has come up many times because if you recall, kind of in the pre-FTX bloodbath era of last year, there was a lot of hemming and hawing over different staking services. This is staking in the crypto sense of putting your coins in the future and making money, not unlike a savings account. Apple, we famously sort of talked about and mused over would they turn their savings account of Apple Pay or Apple Savings into like a staking or whatever. But there's always this question of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which is FDIC, the amount of money that an entity is going to protect your money. So something that I've always thought about was the limit, because when you think about the crypto space, and we talk about Dogecoin millionaires, and we talk about Ethereum billionaires, these different things. Well, we all know that the FDIC's insurance limit is $250,000, right? $250,000. And I actually did some research over the weekend just because I was curious. So in 1933, when the FDIC came to be, what do you think that deposit insurance amount limit was?
Ooh, I would say 1933.
Yeah, we're talking about 9 years.
5,000.
Okay, you should be hired because it's 2,500. It probably should have been 5,000. But however, the next year, someone like you said, you know what, it should be 5,000. And they made it 5,000 on the same day the year after. And everyone probably thought, hey, the economy's growing, everyone's growing. This FDIC must be growing with us. But then no, it stopped in 1934 at 5,000, and it went for 16 years until it went to 10,000 in 1950. Anyway, I won't read you all the dates, but the most important thing to note is it got really big in 1980, went to 100,000. And then it took 30 years, our lifetimes, to get to $250,000. And that was in 2010.
Went to 250,000 in 2010.
So in 2010, and that was a drought of 30 years. So now, this is the kind of moment in time where as soon as this starts to become real, the government and the numbers are going to start to have to become backed by something that's real. One of the number one reasons why nobody wants to talk about their crypto holdings or putting it into any kind of quote institution is because they know if they go belly up, they're not even going to be able to come close to paying me that $10 million of Doge they owe.
No, we won't exist.
You know what I mean? And that's a fascinating thing because they're also private. It's a private company. It's not the government.
That is super interesting. That's one to track of what those date timestamps, how they come up with that number, how you would lobby to change it, and is anybody looking at that over the next if you said one gap was 16 years and one was 30, I don't know, we're hitting year 14 since the last time they looked at it. That's interesting.
Well, but now the question back to hardware is, well, if everyone is storing some amount of their value and it's available because look at their face is seen by their phone and it ends up popping up, then in theory, it would be really easy for the government, who's now making us file taxes almost automatically and digitally, to know exactly what all of these various holdings are. So wouldn't that suggest an obvious way to say, hey, we should probably be insuring the deposits of our citizens to a level that's a lot higher than what it was in previous years, because the distribution of wealth around the United States and the age ranges has changed dramatically because of high tech generally, but also because of crypto specifically. That to me feels like another one of these misses where you're never going to get anyone to trust anybody if you tell them that, I'm sorry, your bank burned down and I can't give you any money. It's strange to me.
I'm just reading all kinds of crazy news right now about Bitcoin. One of the headlines said, Bitcoin or cryptocurrency is causing a lot of noise right now. And I've actually seen this story before, but it's about the actual fans and the GPUs and the bit mining machines causing like noise problems in certain towns. But it was just reposted an hour ago. I'll tell you who it was from. It's from CBS News, which I find interesting. So mainstream media covering cryptocurrency making a lot of noise, literally, as they say. And yeah, that it's just really, really funny to me. Also, shock leak reveals China could be about to blow up the price of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. This is from Forbes 8 hours ago. Why is this coming? What is
on tax day?
This is Billy Bambro, senior contributor at Forbes here.
That's a fake name. That was written by AI. Billy Bambro is a line from a Taylor Swift song. The thing that's really, so to bring it back to hardware and talk a little bit about maybe some of the meetings you're going to have. If there was ever a week to get in and do some dirty stuff and manipulate things, this is the week to do it. I mean, there you have literally every aspect of air cover you could possibly have. And if you know that Bitcoin halving is coming, if you've been in Bitcoin mining, we talk about countries, right? Countries in the world that, just to remind our listeners, was something we talked about like probably 2 summers ago, when there was all this talk about adding more sanctions against countries that we're, in either hot wars or proxy wars with. But there is an interesting correlation between countries that the United States has sanctions against, meaning we prevent effectively the flow of American fiat dollars to them in the form of all kinds of things, from trade rules and regulations to the way that, different transactions occur. Over time, those countries have amassed lots of alternative sources of value. Sometimes it's bars of gold, in trucks. Other times it's Bitcoin. Sometimes it's rare earth metals, lithium, for battery manufacture, anything that you can sell somewhere else, not to the United States, to make money. And China is right up there. Now, I wouldn't call it sanctions that we have against them per se, but we have all kinds of insane economic treaties and deals and things that are constantly moving left and right. And, Russia's another one. Turns out Kazakhstan's a big one, Brazil, Iran, like you can name literally everyone who's in the news right now from a military standpoint. And if you're in the business of buying a bunch of or dumping a bunch of Bitcoin to move the price up and down, who knows, maybe even the American spot Bitcoin ETF can't smooth out those ups and downs. If China wanted to mobilize $1 trillion and make a Bitcoin buy and just blow everyone's mind, they could.
It does.
I guess nothing to them. And that's totally possible.
It's
like right around the house to make it screw with stuff.
Keep your eyes and ears open. We haven't, covered the full geopolitical landscape, but I feel like the tension in Gaza, the escalation in the narrative from the White House, between White House and Netanyahu, like that is a full, escalation. That's the best way to put it in the language, and words matter. We've used this phrase here too, of like, this is how the international geopolitical landscape is shaping up when they say we're not negotiating, or there's no plan B, these phrases that you start to hear, it does feel like there's a lot of tension about to boil over. At the same time, it's tax day and heading into the Bitcoin halving, and Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs getting approved in Hong Kong. It feels like there's now is that the release valve? We haven't talked about this too, of like that flight to safety inside of cryptocurrency. Does that, in essence, become a true release valve for geopolitical tensions? I mean, I'll go to a whole nother place, which is Elon was down there meeting with Argentinian Miele. Exactly. And like,
Miele in Argentina.
Again, I'm kind of like you. I'm like making sense of all this, but we've also, there's been an emerging theme on the show in the past 10 episodes of these quasi-government private interactions. Are they government? You just gave 4 examples of here in the States between FDIC, these private companies, the IRS. We talked about when the former Fed chair was propping up the Bank of New York, and it's like, well, is he acting as like a quasi-government agency, just using his own personal money to back up the bank? There's so many examples of this hybrid of like, is it government? Is it personal? I feel like I lost the thread on it, but
well, I feel like what you're hinting at is to bring it around. It's like there's a new kind of coup available. Before it was a political plus military equals leadership, and now there is a political plus economic savviness equals leadership. A different kind of coup, an economic hitman style coup, if you will. Which brings it around, because then if you like that release stop in Hong Kong, as you say that, it makes a lot. I mean, look, are we gonna with a straight face say that there is no American business person's money going through Hong Kong? Like, are we supposed to assume that all of that money is Hong Kong and Chinese? Like, no, that's just a port of service of business, which it has been, respective to mainland China for years, and now it's a way to, I'm not going to say launder. We don't have to get dirty with it, but if you're in the business of making, needing to put money somewhere and move things through things that you don't want the United States to know about, you think Argentina is going to the U.S. and talking about Bitcoin, or Venezuela, or no, they're probably going to places like Hong Kong. They're going to places like EU.
Elon, again,
the money flows.
Example of not flowing of quasi-government, because if he goes to Argentina and he wants to build the biggest factory in the world using robots and not hire a single human, but he wants to pay for it in Dogecoin, he could do that in Argentina. You know what I mean? Like, when you talk about like not get dirty about it, but like that is a reality of how we have talked about this, about like, how are they paying for these rockets? How is he paying for SpaceX? How are they paying the vendors? How's all this money just moving between these billion-dollar transactions? Well, maybe these guys are already thinking about it that way. And if I'm Melee, yeah, I'll take your Bitcoin. You can pay me in cryptocurrency. I have no idea that that's what's happening. But one of the things that we need to go back and explore is, remember when Elon filed that company with the like special purpose filing, the special purpose S1 filing that allowed him to fractionalize the ownership of the company differently? Do you remember when we covered this? I have not heard it come back up again. Take everything we just said, of all the different examples, again, another person who would have perhaps a vested interest to, he has Tesla as a publicly traded company and he can fractionalize that ownership on the markets. But let's say he wants to create an AI company, X, and he wants his individual owners, the individual users, in a true decentralized Web3 fashion to have the ownership stake over what they put in and what they generate with that AI. I don't know how I got there, but I just would say that's one to watch. Like, we put a pin in it and I haven't gone back to it, but he legitimately filed with the SEC that S1 filing that had some special provision in it about like the appropriate decentralization of the initial sale. I got to go back and look.
It was hot around the time of DAOs being hot. I seem to remember. No, it wasn't that long ago. But you just eloquently, maybe by accident, brought this around to hardware, because this now brings us full circle to a few episodes past when our best pal Sammy Altman, who was the head and then was deposed and then was fired, then rehired, then back in the head again of OpenAI, said, "Hey, I need to go get a couple $1 trillion, single-digit trillion, not 10 but 7, to build microchips, and they're going to be special AI chips that are going to be put into hardware, and those AI chips that are going to be put into hardware are going to be required to effectively." He didn't say it this way, but the way I heard it is that he's leveling up. He wants to we all know the internet technology has to level up. As soon as AI chips become common or exist, they're going to start a path of becoming commonplace and replacing every chip everywhere, because how are you going to have one device that can't talk to another? And today you don't really have that problem, some dongles notwithstanding. But the point is, where does $7 trillion come from? Well, it turns out he's doing a nice little tour, a dog and pony, right just through the Middle East. And that then now brings, I think we've just pulled every single continent, maybe save Australia, into our conversation today. And how every single country and every single point on the planet, the same way that a distributed ledger can touch anyone anywhere, so is this economic pattern of how it's all being built and regulated. And there's not one point on the globe that actually isn't important or relevant to the conversation. And everyone's doing their best part, right? Everyone's adding the piece, their best ingredient, because of their either financial or natural reserves. They're creating a story and an ingredient to build this big stew. It's called AI, and it can't exist without everyone else. The irony is that artificial intelligence can't exist without the whole Earth's intelligence. Maybe it's not the irony. Maybe it's some of the sweet irony.
Some of the AI regulation coming out of the UK, and actually this is from the Financial Times. UK rethinks AI legislation as alarm grows over potential risks, because they had, put certain organizations, like watchdog organizations, like almost in charge over top of like monitoring this thing. Like, think about private companies that they put in charge as surveillance partners. And I think people are worried about the biases that could come from that, or, is it the right group of people? Is it the right structure? And that's an interesting thought process, because you're going to need a truly decentralized structure of owners for everyone to feel like they are properly regulating AI, to feel like I had a say in it.
Yeah, but like the UK, like, just to get back to everyone's ingredients, right? Europe and the UK is sort of, if you kind of peel it back and gamify this AI and like think about it as a game, a video game, a board game, and what resources do you need to make AI, and how would you play that? Well, the UK provides a lot of great regulation. Like the UK is actually like a really polite people who overthink everything. And maybe you want the most polite people on the planet who overthink everything to provide at least the first draft of what regulation should be. The same way you want guys who have lithium in their dirt to be the ones telling you how to build batteries. You know what I mean? It's like, everyone's got to contribute. Is the UK going to get it right? No. But someone's got to put that straw man up to let everybody else fill it in. And it turns out they got nothing going on.
Well, I'm reading this article right now from the Financial Times, and I see this name, Nick Clegg, who I know Nick. He's the president of global affairs at Meta. And it says, quote, "At the moment, the regulators," talking about the UK regulators, "are working on a rather crude rule of thumb that if future models are of a particular size or surpass a particular size, that therefore there should be greater disclosure," said Nick Clegg, president of global affairs at Meta, last Tuesday. It's super, super interesting. We have not talked about Meta a lot in this, but Nick, I believe, is a UK transplant. I think he was based here in Washington, D.C. for a little while. Now it sounds like he's over in London working with the UK regulators on what? AI regulation. I don't care whether you call it the Metaverse. I don't care whether you call it artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, crypto. I don't care what you call it. Zuckerberg is maybe the quiet leader here, both with the hardware and getting the regulation.
The Quest. You know what? This might be the magic trick. That is the greatest magic trick that was ever pulled on Apple. Because now that you're painting the picture, because when you said Nick Clegg, I chuckle because Nick Clegg isn't just like any normal
he
British
worked
transplant.
with the Fed.
Like, Homeboy was like a prime minister. No.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I know. Not only that, I think he was knighted. Like he's a sir. Like he's like one of those dudes. And then
For a long time, not recently.
so like come over here to the U.S., Mr. Prime Minister, and like come over and do us something nice. And so now you're thinking, like you just said, the hardware, right? We talk about the hardware is the gatekeeper. Well, Zuckerberg's almost acting like his own little world, right? Everyone talks that Zuckerberg, if Facebook was a country, it would be the biggest country on the planet. Everyone says that. And he's acting as such. He hired the Prime Minister from England to come over and say, hey, give me some regulation. Then he's like, hey, I want to go make some really cool hardware. And he's like, well, Tim Cook won't talk to me and his shit's too expensive. I'll make quests. I'll just start giving them away for a couple $100 and I'll get everybody's eyeballs all jacked in, and it'll take me longer because I don't have those fancy guys, but we still have quests out there because no one wants to buy a Vision Pro or use it. There's no app still. There's an app in the App Store for the Masters. You put on the headset and it's just 8 gigantic screens playing golf simultaneously in your face, like you're at a sports book. Like that's the future? No. Nick Clegg and Zuckerberg and Quest, I don't know. They might be the new.
I mean, now all of a sudden that rewaving to Meta and
I don't know,
play right into that Meta Quest hardware. Look, I do not have an Apple Vision Pro in my house right now. I do have a Meta Quest 3 in my house, and that is a really interesting tell. Just as a practitioner of my own behavior, I can tell you what I want you to believe, but my actual behavior is I have a Meta Quest 3 because it was cheaper, because it was a minimum viable product, because it did just as good of a job. I was not thinking about it from that's the device that he can then walk into backdoor rooms at Parliament, put on everybody's head, send them home with it, make it work, do all of the identity testing, do all of the and we know Zuckerberg had tried to do the decentralized currency with the Libra, and that failed, so he went the other way in the metaverse. And Libra eventually get the system that allows for the payment and the transactions, and it'll just come in the form of a layer 2 cryptocurrency, and he'll have the world ready to go.
I mean, if Libra would have taken off, he might have changed the name of Facebook to crypto. Would have that been embarrassing? Would have said he changed it to Meta, and all he's got to do is take Nick Clegg and brainwash him long enough. Once he goes back to visit family in the UK, he'll just tell people, you have to buy the Meta Quest 2, and this is the metaverse. They'll all just believe it. Everyone loves a guy.
All right, we are going to be flying into the rest of this week. Keep your eye on the markets. Keep your eye on Bitcoin halving. Watch your countdown clocks. And yeah, stand by for a special recording. Any final thoughts as we head into the last few days here, post-tax day?
Well, not financial advice, but post-tax day, things tend to go up. So let's have a look at what's going to come towards that full moon on Tuesday. I think it's a good long one. We'll record a short one on Friday for the halving or the halvening, depending on how you pronounce it, and make up the difference. Great talking to you.
That's all the time we have for this episode of Off the Record, on the Rocks. Join us next week for more news and all things Web3. Check, please.